Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we've got some new shots of the Cybertruck doing some testing near Fremont. We've also got some small tweaks to Tesla pricing, some news on France and Tesla, those conversations seem to continue, and a few other items as well. Alright, starting off with the stock, end of an era. Today, Tesla finishing down 0.75%, closing at $256.79. The NASDAQ today up 0.4%. So the 13-day historic streak for Tesla sadly comes to an end, even though the NASDAQ did finish today in the positive. We could not survive the FOMC meeting and JPOW press conference. So you can see Tesla flirting with the green throughout most of the day, right around the time of the Fed statement release. Unfortunately, saw a big drop in the market, Tesla participating in that as well, and just couldn't quite recover throughout the rest of the day. But we'll talk about that FOMC meeting in a second. We do have quite a bit of macro news stuff today, macro news today. First, the PPI, or Producer Price Index, following the CPI yesterday. So the headline number year over year only up 1.1%. Looks like expectations somewhere around 1.5%. So coming in below expectations, which is nice to see. And you can see, how that's trended for the last few months, continuing to fall significantly. And then on a month-over-month basis, only up 0.2%, which is right around in the range that you want it to be. And sorry, that was for core. Headline first, core here for the month-over-month. So again, right in the range you want to see, and has been pretty consistently sort of around that level over the last 4 to 5 months. So pretty good report, I would say, for the CPI, and that led into the FOMC meeting. Give me 1 second here. Looking a little bright on this camera. Okay, so going into the FOMC meeting, as we can see the statement here, the Fed did pause interest rates for the first time since March 2022, so about 15 months or so since we had a meeting where there was not an interest rate increase. The FOMC statement, not filled with a lot of changes, really just changing the language about holding the rate, but continuing to assess things as things develop, whether or not interest rates will need to be further increased from here. So again, not too much there in the statement, though they did publish an updated summary of economic projections. We're looking at March here, so you can see that for 2023, median interest rate expectations were somewhere around 5.25% there. Now you can see that those have increased, so the scale bumping up to 7% here, and this maybe increasing up to about a 5.6% median. So a slight increase in where the Fed views interest rates going, which I think was the primary driver of the stock market declines shortly after this release, despite the pause, which, as we've talked about, was widely expected. So, we've talked a lot about this. These summaries of economic projections have not proven to be the best forecasters of where interest rates ultimately end up going. Certainly, if you look back at these over the last year or so, not going to be a great guide. So, I think the market maybe just taking advantage of some of the volatility that this presents, but I don't know that it's putting a lot of weight necessarily into these sort of median projections. So we'll see. As part of the conference, let's just pull up a couple of comments here. Powell did say that they didn't make any decisions regarding future meetings, no discussion about alternating meetings, so pause now and then an increase next time. But obviously we can see from the summary of economic projections, that's kind of their expectation. He did kind of slip up at one point and said, I think the skip makes sense. So implying that, skip and then maybe increase next time. But he said, then he corrected himself, said he shouldn't say skip. So kind of interesting to see that. And then he said there's really only the earliest signs of disinflation in non-housing services, an area of inflation that he's been talking about for a while. So starting to see a little bit of that, but again, continue to reiterate that the process is going to take time. So those are kind of the summary of the FOMC comments today. But we're through it now. Kind of a crazy week from a macroeconomic perspective, but hopefully a little bit more, at least a little bit less news for the rest of the week. All right, getting into Tesla news, we'll start off with a price tweak on the Model Y. So the sort of standard range or all-wheel drive version, Tesla's stopped calling them that, but the lowest range Model Y, which is the 4680 version out of Texas, price has been increased by $250. So if we look at our price tracking table, you can see that here. It's the only price change this time around. So obviously a pretty small tweak, but it does ever so slightly push things a little bit more mix-wise, probably up to these other vehicles, long range and performance. And then obviously if this is one of Tesla's highest volume offerings, which presumably it would be, that obviously drives a little bit of extra margin on those cars themselves. Now, how much that results versus Tesla maybe providing some discounts on inventory vehicles remains to be seen, as we've talked about quite a few times. But as we head into the end of the quarter, just the last couple of weeks here, good to see Tesla, having enough confidence to kind of up pricing on one of their most popular vehicle configurations with this opening price point Model Y. So I think positive to see that. Obviously, we talked previously about Tesla lowering the loot box or referral rewards for the Model 3 and the Model Y, which I thought was interesting again, also heading into quarter end. So at least a couple of positive signs there in the recent days on, demand for at least the Model Y approaching the end of Q2. Now, we also have a tweet here from Chris Zhang. Wouldn't put a ton of stock in this, but apparently sources are also indicating that Tesla China will soon begin a new round of price increases as well. So again, who knows? We get a lot of faulty information out of China a lot, so we'll see if anything comes of that. All right, getting into the Cybertruck. So interesting wrap here from Tesla. Obviously, in the vehicle manufacturing industry, there's prototypes out and about, testing from time to time, and pretty heavily camouflaged with wraps. And I think Tesla may be just paying some homage to that and joking around a little bit here with the camouflage wrap on the Cybertruck, as obviously we've all seen fairly well-developed prototypes and don't expect a ton of changes. Maybe there are some things Tesla's trying to hide a little bit, but to me, comes across a little bit more as a joke. They even ran it through a drive-through for In-N-Out out there in California, and Elon replied to this saying, it's a tradition. So I don't know, maybe tradition for like a release candidate or production beta type of vehicle. Not sure exactly what he's meaning by a tradition. Maybe just a tradition to go to In-N-Out Burger, not sure. But kind of interesting to see this, a little bit more, maybe a finalized version and out there testing and making some noise and getting some attention, probably pretty intentionally here from Tesla. Also gives us a glimpse at how a Cybertruck might look with a wrap. Obviously a pretty unique wrap, but a wrap nonetheless, and lets us use our imagination a little bit for what some other wraps could look like, which I expect will be, a big thing for the Cybertruck, as it is only going to come in probably one color, as Elon has said before, which is nothing. So interesting to see that today. All right, next we've got some updates on France and Tesla. So we had previously talked about Elon meeting with the French president, and apparently they're going to be meeting again. Reuters today reporting that Emmanuel Macron and Elon Musk will be meeting on Friday for the second time in just over a month to talk about a number of things. Macron said, "I'm going into that meeting with an agenda. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, in which he is involved, social media, regulation framework, and then I'll also talk to him about cars, batteries to promote French and European attractiveness," and said that it's up to the company to look at these different issues in Europe. So we'll be selling France in terms of whether or not there would be a possible factory location there in France. So interesting to see this. I don't know that people would put France at the top of the contender list, but 2 meetings in a month definitely says something. And they also had comments from their Minister of Digital Affairs to CNBC, who said that, quote, "It will be great to have a Tesla factory in France. There's been a lot of effort and energy to make sure this is possible and this can happen." And added that they've invested in an entire sector for electric batteries, and that, quote, "France is the best possible place in Europe to establish the next Tesla factory." So the "it will be great" part, I think that's more of just a translation thing, not saying that this is something that is going forward, as obviously says they want to make sure that this is possible and this can happen. But obviously a lot of, effort, time being spent here by France to work with Elon and potentially, maybe secure a deal with Tesla for a battery factory, a vehicle factory, or some other sort of investment, which Elon has said that they probably would invest in some way in France in the past. So we'll see what comes of that. Hopefully a little bit more information will come out of that on Friday. Also, something we should see later this week, Elon tweeting, replying to Holmar's blog here, saying that FSD Beta 11.4.4 should go out towards the end of this week. 11.4.3 really just started rolling out to more broadly to customers in the last couple of days. So again, we continue to see pretty quick iteration here for new version numbers, and hopefully, obviously the 11.4.3 release notes were the same. We'll have to see if .4 is also the same, or we're getting a new version with sort of updated release notes. So it's something to keep an eye on there. Then we've got another update on NACS as this continues to sort of waterfall down. Just a headline only here from Benzinga, but apparently Mercedes is evaluating a technical implementation for possibly including the NACS in the charging network that they have previously announced that they're developing in North America, as well as their locations. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're working on implementing that into their vehicles. I'm sure they're considering it, but this seems to be more of a comment in terms of the charging network that they are developing, which you kind of hate to be in that position and make a charging network that's, only CCS compatible and get down the road in North America. And if NACS truly does become the standard, you're probably going to have to make some updates to that if you want that network to be really viable. So again, we'll continue to follow the developments there for NACS. All right, a couple things out of China. Looks like Tesla is going to be participating in the Shenzhen Auto Show, which is starting on Friday. So sometimes these things are a little bit hit or miss. Tesla seems to partake a little bit more in them in China, but oftentimes they'll just skip these sort of auto shows completely. So probably not a ton of news that will come out of that, but interesting to see Tesla participating. And then Tesla has apparently denied the rumors that we talked about Shanghai being a testing ground for FSD. Tesla China apparently told a media outlet there that, quote, the information is not true, end quote. So, we've talked a lot about China replies to different media reports. It's tough when you get denials like that because you don't know exactly which part of the report that they're denying. It could be a very small piece of it. But we had previously talked about how, it wasn't anything that was wide release, maybe just going to some employees and some conversations about, something beyond that happening at some point. So what the denial is, not entirely clear, but I'm sure there's at least a little bit of traction there for FSD. We've also got an update from BYD. Haven't been able to verify this with other media outlets, but Zhang went on Twitter here saying that BYD's executive vice president has said that due to the Inflation Reduction Act, the U.S. market is not currently under consideration for the expansion of BYD at this time. So obviously, it makes it tough if they don't have a ton of factories and battery production supply chain set up here in the U.S. with the Inflation Reduction Act. So that kind of seems to be what that is alluding to. But hopefully that'll, give some cushion for Tesla. Not that they necessarily need it in the U.S. It's a lot more competitive in China with BYD. But I think what I've kind of presumed is that BYD would maybe come to the U.S. under another brand, and maybe a partnership there would make sense. I still think that makes sense, so maybe they'll evaluate something like that. All right, and then last couple of things. So SpaceX has completed their 200th landing already. I tweeted a couple days ago the video from SpaceX on that timeline of all these launches and landings over the year and how those have accelerated to an extreme degree, obviously. But pretty cool to see them now hit that milestone for the 200th landing of an orbital class rocket. And then a couple of quick corrections from yesterday. I did misquote the headline month-over-month CPI number. So we went through 4 numbers. One of those was misquoted because, unfortunately, investing.com had not updated the chart yet. So I had quoted the results from April rather than the May number. So my apologies for not double-checking that, but month-over-month was up 0.1% rather than 0.4%. And then the second thing, the Polestar 2, I should have read this full quote because they said that it's eligible for the $7,500 credit, but that apparently is only on the leases. So for just normal loan purchase, not, at least my current understanding, is not eligible for the credit on that Polestar 2. All right, that'll wrap it up for today then. So as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Thursday, June 15th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.